All right, everyone. Thanks for being here. It's 7:02 according to my phone. We're going to get started. Going to ask if we can get those slides up. Or I can attempt to do it. There we go. Thank you. Thanks, Mike. We had to send out a different link today, so thanks for finding your way to the new link. I created the earlier link, and we did a town hall with our employees this afternoon, and there was all kinds of problems with the link that I created. So I'm not allowed to touch the Zoom account anymore, and I'm going to leave that to people who are much smarter than me, because I was having to do everything at once. It was way too much. I have trouble just talking coherently for half an hour or so. So anyway, tonight we're just going to go through kind of the latest. I've been doing, over this year, going back to last summer, we've done a lot of these town halls. You can put questions in the chat. What I will try to do is I'll try to go back to them at the end, just because it's too tricky for me to try to sort of do it. As I'm talking. All right, so let's hit the next slide. All right, so welcome everyone. The agenda tonight is it's just sort of the latest on some things, and a little bit more explanation on some things, and then some future steps too. So we're going to talk about the latest on vaccinations. I did this presentation with employees. We're going to go a little bit more quickly with the vaccination part, because that's really more of an employee thing. But I will talk about where we are with that. Dutchess County recently being last week, tweaked, I'll use the word tweaked, their guidance on close contacts and contact tracing. And so it may not mean huge changes for us. I did want to share that with you all tonight. I also just wanted to talk a little bit about the decision to switch a school, to remote instruction when we do that temporarily, and what goes into that decision. I've kind of talked about in the past, but just want to reiterate that, because sometimes I see questions come up. And then last but certainly not least, we are going to get into some specifics about our surveillance COVID testing program for in-person folks. And so we'll end with that, and then I will take a peek at the chat and see what questions I can answer. And I think we can get this done, like I said, in a half an hour. I'll try. All right, here we go. Next slide. Latest on vaccinations. Number one, I do not have any insider information about vaccines. So that was a little bit more of a message to the employees, to our staff today, but it is not something that school districts are super involved with. We are very excited that our employees are in the 1B group, and 1B for the vaccines just opened up on Friday of last week. And so, and we're pleased to announce that some of our teachers have appointments this week to get vaccinated. It is not a huge number. I don't have the exact number. I want to say it's probably around 10 or 15, so it's not near where we'd like it to be, but we also realize that there are a lot of people in 1B. I won't go through the list exclusively, but it's a lot of essential workers and also people over the age of 65. Everyone's deserving of the vaccine who wants it. We're excited to be included in that group. But I think there's been maybe some vaccine rollouts. I know this feels like a really long time ago now, but when I was a principal, we did H1N1 vaccinations during that whole thing. And we did those like in school. We had school clinics for staff and kids, and that is not the way this is happening. So this is, I'm not going to try to explain exactly how this is happening because I'll leave that to the governor or the county folks. But there are sites in Dutchess County, and every week they get an allotment of vaccines. Someone needs to go on mute who just got on. If you can mute yourself, thank you. Sorry. So it's done by county sites and different health organizations. And so we are basically just doing everything we can to make it easy for our folks to get the vaccine and support them as much as possible. I say patience. Just because, and this is to everybody, I think they're estimating that just to get through 1B is going to go into April, which seems just so incredibly far away right now, but it is what it is. So again, we'll do everything we can to help our folks get it who qualify. And then that last message is really just to our employees. Like, that was our way of saying we're not, at least right now, planning on having any sort of Beacon City School District shot vaccination clinic for our employees. So if people can get online and get signed up for a spot, we want them to grab it. So this is going to be spread out over weeks and weeks and weeks. Next slide. All right, we just wanted to talk about a change or a tweak in the Dutchess County guidance on close contacts. So I'll just read it. This guidance came to us last week. It's not a huge change. And it's, doing contact tracing is tough in the school. I think we've done an amazing job. Our nursing staff, I just can't say enough about what they've done this year. They have been amazing dealing with everything. And but I'll just briefly read this. Dutchess County DBCH will work with schools to determine the specific exposures within the classroom and school settings by identifying only those individuals who must be considered close contacts is subject to the mandatory precautionary quarantine. The definition of close contacts includes spending 10 minutes or more with a confirmed COVID-19 case while standing within 6 feet of the individual. Wearing cloth masks does not impact exposure. That obviously we're wearing masks, and masks we feel have really helped us. That just means in terms of contact tracing, you don't get to opt out of it if you're wearing a mask. So what does this mean for us? It may mean some little changes when we have an exposure incident in one of the schools. We will analyze the classroom or school setting with the applicable school staff, and we may be able to reduce the amount of people who quarantine if they are far away from the person who tested positive. This is hard. This is difficult to do because of the privacy rights of all of us regarding our health. And so we can't just broadcast who the person is and then whittle it down from there. But I think some school districts we didn't have a huge issue. We haven't had a huge issue with this. But some school districts were having to quarantine all of the kids in a cafeteria based on an exposure, or all of the kids in a huge gym class, or kids that are really spread out. And so this hopefully, while being very safe, will reduce the number of people who have to quarantine by maybe a little bit, or maybe a little bit more. So this has just gone into place in the last few days. So not a huge change, but I think this is a great example. I just want to, if you guys tune into these things I've been doing for a while, I always like to give a lot of praise to lots of people. And so I just got to sing the praises of the Dutchess County Health Department folks. We have these weekly meetings with them. All the Dutchess County school districts, we're all together and we meet with all of them. And we really hash out stuff and go through things and really get into great amounts of detail. And then they're basically getting calls from us every day, or it feels like every day. And so this was a lot of feedback from school folks that we need to start having a little bit more of a common sense approach to contact tracing. like I said, this may not result in a huge change, but it may help us do this in, like I said, in a little bit more common sense sort of manner. So we will see. But thanks to the Dutchess County for really listening to us and supporting us with this too. So the next slide is just kind of a caveat they put on, and I just wanted to talk about that briefly too. If you can go to the, oh, sorry, you are. So they also wrote, and we'll put this on our reopening website tomorrow or Friday, but DBCH may consider other factors, including virus strain, as part of the case investigation to determine the risk of exposure on the particular circumstances of the exposure. DBCH, that's Dutchess County Health, or New York State Department of Health, NYSDOH, sorry for all the alphabet soup stuff there, reserve the right to issue and enforce mandatory quarantine orders for classroom-based exposure incidents when necessary. So that is them basically saying that, they are looking very closely for these other strains or mutations. And so they may step in and do more contact tracing or quarantining as a result if they uncover that. Or they are working with them, they may enforce a larger quarantine. That doesn't happen very often because we're very, very collaborative with them, and we work with them on a lot of the decisions that we have to make on a daily basis with all of this. But so this may be almost too granular for some folks, but we wanted to share it because it may impact. And we've been very, I think we've taken a very safe approach to in-person school this year, so we would never compromise that, but I think it may bring a more common sense approach to contact tracing and help us out a little bit. Next slide, please. All right, so I just wanted to explain, just a little bit. I've gone over this in the past, and so hopefully there's no surprises here, but just the factors that go into the decision to go remote temporarily in one of our schools, or potentially somewhere down the road, the entire district, although we've worked really hard as a community, and I'll talk about that to mitigate that, at least up to this point. So one of the reasons, and I think in my messages I try to say this, but I just wanted to kind of review it. One of the reasons that we may need to go remote is that we just need time to conduct contact tracing. Typically at Rombout or Beacon High School, we need more time because the kids are in more classes. Or sometimes we find out about a positive case a little bit later into the night. And so we just, we're not going to be able to contact trace at 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And so the safe and appropriate thing to do is for us to go remote in that school so we can do that, and also to communicate with families if we need to quarantine. We might also need to go remote. So that's been some of our schools. We might also need to go remote because of the number of people quarantining. The first couple remote experiences at the high school in Rombout last fall was because the number of people quarantining was pretty large. Maybe with this new guidance, we might be able to cut down on that just a little bit. We'll see. Forrestal we had to close because of an exposure in like a specials class that a lot of kids went through, and so it was almost like the whole school that was quarantining. So I've got to experience that this year as a parent too. And so we may need to go remote because of that. But I think you've probably been noticing a pattern if you read the communications I put out. But a large number of the confirmed cases we get now, the person has already been out isolating for quite some time. That's due to probably a couple of factors. One factor is people really following the daily screening tool we have and staying out if they have been exposed by a family member, and then they may catch the virus and then test positive much later, and so they've already been out that whole time. That's probably our most typical sort of thing that happens. So people have been doing an amazing job with the screening tool. That's when I mentioned the community effort behind all of this year. And and so a lot of our confirmed cases, in fact, the overwhelming majority of them, the person's already been out for quite some time. So another factor that may impact our decision to go remote is advice from the Department of Health. Most of the decision making is up to us, but they do, like you saw in that guidance, they do reserve the right, to quarantine a larger number of people or advise us to close. Although they typically, in my experience, they stay away from school closures if they can. They tend to just sort of give advice and counsel, and then also give us advice on what to do. So the last thing that might factor into us going remote is state guidance or regulations, and just briefly about that. Obviously last spring we experienced a long-term closure at the beginning of this whole thing, and then schools were able to develop their reopening plans over the summer. So I'm going to kind of just be brief about this because it's a bit of a confusing area for all of us superintendents and other people involved in this, including folks at the Dutchess County level. It appears, and I don't want to say it's my opinion because it seems somewhat clear, but it hasn't been put in writing. I've done other of these town halls where I've talked about the microcluster zone strategies, yellow, orange, and red, and all of that. The state has not announced a new microcluster, I think, in probably over a month. It seems like they're kind of backing away from having yellow, orange, or red zones. The other thing the governor said last summer was that if a regional positive rate was 9% or higher, that could close the region's schools. Last week, at a briefing he did on Monday of last week, he kind of started backing away from that a little bit without providing a lot of clear guidance to schools. So, so the flip side of that is that we are operating and doing this as a district, and we're able to keep doing things in a safe manner, in a cautious manner, but also able to try to make things work for us as a community too. And so, it's a little bit of a confusing time, but also it allows us to take some leads on some stuff. And so that's the next part of this whole thing. Next slide. All right, so that leads us to implementing a surveillance testing program in the district. So I'm just going to kind of go through the basics of this. And then I'm going to go through the basics of this and then kind of talk about some next steps. So we are starting a surveillance testing program. It's just another layer of safety for us, for staff, and for students, and to also, sorry for the typo on the slide, and also for us to identify asymptomatic positive cases. It's pretty much that simple. So it's just a way for us to proceed as cases are rising in the county, the community, the region, the state, country, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It allows us to add another layer to our program. So we are targeting the week to do this, to really start doing it the week of January 25th. With testing some folks, and I'll get to who in a second, testing some folks on the Wednesday. That would be primarily people involved with the gold part of the hybrid program, and then some blue. Sorry for that mistake. And then folks on Wednesday who are involved in the gold part of the hybrid. So this is a voluntary program, so we are voluntarily doing this as a district. So we also would be doing this voluntarily with staff and students. I don't know all the legalities around this. I think if the state is requiring you to test as a means to stay open, then I think the testing applies to all of the people who are doing in-person instruction. But we're not being required to do this by any stretch. This is something that we're taking on, again, for the reasons I said at the beginning. So this will be, we'll be creating a random group of people out of people who volunteer to do this. And a couple more things. A couple more things about that. We wanted to, I guess I maybe could get to this on the where part, but we're not going to be pulling kids out of class to do this. We want families, especially for our younger kids, to be with them for the testing and when they get the results. So this is a part that we need to work on a little bit, but we're putting together a schedule, especially we're putting together a schedule for Wednesday when we're all remote anyway, for students and staff to get tested, and also Monday. And for Monday, we're targeting Monday morning to do it. And again, the goal of it is to identify asymptomatic positives and also help us, I forgot to say this at the beginning too, also help us to get a sense of positive rates within the district too. The other beauty of this is we get the results from a test in about 10 or 15 minutes. We'll be able to share them with the family or student pretty soon after the test. So in terms of where, we're looking to have the testing center be at Beacon High School. End of January, weather can be tricky, so we're going to come up with a couple different logistical ways to do it, both either indoors or outdoors. But we are working on that plan. All right, so a couple other things about the testing. I'm seeing some things pop up in the chat, and I thought I was pretty clear about this. It is voluntary for people. It is a way to help us stay open. And so I will encourage people to do it, but there is no mandatory nature behind this at all. It gives us good data, and frankly, it helps staff. It helps our staff and folks feel safe with staying reopened during a difficult time. All right, next slide. All right, so next steps with this, we have a variety of next steps and a lot more education to do around this. So the first thing that needs to go out is we'll be sending out a consent form for families who choose to opt into this, and it will be through email, and it'll be a Google form, but it will be a permission, even though in most instances or all, parents will be with a child who gets tested. With that consent form, we'll have FAQs and some sort of explanation video. You certainly do not have to be on this to get the information. We'll provide some more concise ways to do it with the FAQs, and the explanation video to do that as well. So again, we're going to try to test a group of people on Monday the 25th and another group on Wednesday the 27th. So we'll actually be giving out appointments to folks at the end of next week and then Tuesday of the following week, so they know when to come to do this. We'll be taking a look at the results sort of as they go, but also we'll be sharing the results with the Dutchess County Department of Health and the New York State Department of Health as well. They'll help us review them. And we would also share the positive rates with the community too. So just a couple other things about this. You know, these are the rapid tests. They are not a diagnostic tool. Those are really more the PCR tests that a doctor would order. These are simply used in a variety of ways. I think the number of students tested in New York using this model is over 500,000 at this point. And it's a way for us, without being required to kind of keep things moving and try to keep things safe. We're going to look to, we got to work on the details of this a little bit, but we need to, we're going to try to test about 10% of our in-person folks that first week, and then we're going to try to do it again a week or two later, so it's within kind of a 2-week time frame, and test another 10% as well. If we feel like we can do it, and get more kids through the testing thing, then we'll try to do more that first week. We're not exactly sure what it's going to look like as we do it. All right. I'm just going to take a quick look over here. Are the slides clear on when you'll decide to pause and go remote for the entire district? That's a great question. It seems like the governor has kind of stepped back a little bit from having regional closures or county closures based on test rates. They're leaving this up to individual districts to decide. And so, you know, we will, like I say all the time, we're going to monitor this stuff every single day. A couple of things would go into us having to close as a whole district. Staffing shortages, number of people quarantining is so large that we can't really even function anymore in person, or Department of Health is seeing things that concern them, or we're seeing things across all of the schools that we feel like going remote would help mitigate. If we had to do that, I would think that we would probably go for a shorter amount of time. A number of school districts on the other side of the river have been remote since Thanksgiving. There's a few, I don't have exact numbers in my head, of a little bit more than a few districts that have been closed now, or remote now for several weeks here. What we're trying to do is base a closure based on things we're seeing in the district or advice we're getting from the health department. Preemptively closing has not been our method, and I think we've been consistently open, albeit in a hybrid model, but we've been consistently open since back in September. All right. High school schedule. We are kind of always looking at. I think right now, I'd really like to get through the next these winter months a little bit before I make changes really with any schedule in the district. Just because the things are bumpy right now with the number of cases, and making changes to the amount of time any levels in school would be difficult. Sorry, it just takes me a little bit. Poughkeepsie Journal reported the number of cases. Why not go remote for a few weeks to keep everyone safe? You know, I look at these numbers somewhat obsessively every single day, multiple times a day. But I also feel that the in-person model we have is cautious, safe, and we also have not been seeing spread or transmission, I guess is the better word, of the virus in the school. And that's something that we've also consulted with the health department as well. I know there's lots of different opinions about what we should do. And I appreciate those. And believe me, this is stuff that I struggle with every single day. But we right now are staying open in this model and sticking to our model. Tests have high false positive rates. Actually, speaking with health departments and also reading up everything I can about this, they actually don't have high false positives. What they do have is they do have occasional false negatives, but typically now with these rapid tests, a positive on a rapid test is almost a certain positive case. Typically, these rapid tests catch a positive or live virus, usually before a person starts being symptomatic. I try to read up on this. I'm not an expert. Sometimes I have trouble articulating all because I feel like I'm just sort of trying to learn this as best I can. If we consent to have our children tested, how often will they be tested? I think right now we would really just test once. We would just test a student once. And then if we needed to keep this going, for the rest of the year, there could be maybe a time where a student has to get tested again for a second time. But I don't foresee really much more than that. What occurs if I don't have the minimum percentage tested if required for remaining open by volunteers? So right now there's really no guidance or requirements for what we're doing. This is a voluntary program by district and by the people participating. Our hope is that we can get a pretty decent number of people willing to do this so we can get a good random sample. But there are no requirements. If we do get some requirements, I'll share those with the community, and then we'd really emphasize this is a way to stay open. Right now, this is a way to, like I said, it's another layer of safety for us, and it's a way for us to identify folks who need to quarantine, and so it's kind of a voluntary thing right now where there's not a lot of guidance. Again, I'm seeing a question about a specific sort of formula for what might close everything. That formula really, in my mind, isn't being applied right now. There was the microcluster strategy, the yellow, orange, and red, and you can Google that, or we shared information about that last fall. The state hasn't identified those zones in quite some time. I think for sure the state is factoring hospitalization rates into everything they're thinking, but we're not really sure. Things are just a little bit murky on that end. And I also just need to say, I said this earlier, the Dutchess County Department of Health has been amazing during this whole time. So they've just been with us for everything. So I know it's sort of easy to point fingers during this time with all this frustrating things we're experiencing. Some of the lack of clarity is coming from the state level right now, and it's just kind of we're just kind of trying to work through it. All right. Process for switching to remote. Email your child's principal if you want to switch to remote. Plan in the spring to open full time if case numbers drop below a certain level. And maybe I would add to that, everyone is vaccinated on our staff. So who knows? I'm trying not to get too what's the word? Too fantasizing about that too much. You know, because I just don't, we're not sure how this vaccine rollout is going to work, and we're not sure. I know the vaccines, in all the testing they've done with the vaccines, they have a very high success rate. I think there's a lot of uncertainty about what school will look like once everybody is vaccinated. So we all have a lot to learn with that, truly. So it's just something that, you know, it's just something we're working through, but it's certainly something. It's kind of associated with warmer weather, and everything's going to be okay. And but it's we just don't know. I would love to be able to be more certain about that. We just don't know. All right. With cases increasing, would it be helpful to go full remote for 2 to 3 weeks to help reduce spread? So, from an epidemiological standpoint, and this I'm just sort of quoting people because I am certainly not an epidemiologist. I think there's some consensus forming, and you can see this stuff online, but there's some consensus forming that having everybody go all remote actually does not lower, the spread of the virus outside. I think the thinking is with, I preface this by saying I know how challenging the remote is, or excuse me, I know how challenging, hybrid is, and it's not like 5 days a week, and I get it. But I think there's a thinking among sort of policy circles and epidemiological circles that when you just close everything down, then parents are scrambling even more to find childcare for their kids, and then their kids are kind of being exposed in lots of different ways. And so, I don't think there's a sense that just closing schools just sort of makes everything stop, or really, brings the reduction of the virus transmission down. I think they also, and I will say this, I think both the Dutchess folks and folks around the state, and because there's swaths of the country where kids haven't seen the inside of school buildings since last March. I think school folks, and I will not take credit for this by any stretch, but I think folks in the medical field have been kind of surprised / shocked by how well the school part has been going and how little spread there is in school. So, so, and that is said by our colleagues in Dutchess County quite a bit. So, but that being said, if there's something, that we're seeing that really concerns us, or or the Department of Health gets involved and advises us to close. I mean, there's a lot of variables here, and so I always kind of tell folks to be prepared for all contingencies. But we're really trying to just kind of, obviously, like make bigger plans, like do things like planning for testing, et cetera, but also just take it day by day and take a lot of deep breaths. All right. One other thing I'll say about some of that is, I mentioned this earlier. We really try to kind of analyze everything we're doing with the Department of Health folks. So it's not a former history major in college that's me analyzing this stuff. The cases that we're seeing are cases that The cases that we're seeing are cases that are, happening in families outside of school, or, parents or family members in the workplace or whatever. And hopefully this goes without saying, but there's absolutely no judgment from my standpoint about people who are exposed like we all. It's a very difficult time. But we're not, so when I'm reporting a case, sometimes a lot of these folks haven't even been in the building for several weeks. We're not, when the cases are coming in, they're coming in from the outside. They are typically not, in fact, we really haven't seen, spread from person to person in school. All right. Sorry, I'm just trying to read through. I appreciate the comments that aren't questions, and I do read them. I'm just not reading them out loud, but thank you for them. Can you please tell us how the bus drivers are staying safe and socially distanced? We reduced the numbers, as many of you know, on the bus pretty significantly, and everyone's required to wear a mask on the bus, and we try to space everybody out on the bus as much as possible. Are there any plans to surveillance test remote students, especially to catch asymptomatic ones? Our main emphasis has been with focusing on in-person, and when the state was requiring this in some places, that was the focus. But I'll talk to my team. We may be able to open this up. It's the first time we've ever done something about done this, and so we're not sure how efficient we can be. I know I had to personally get tested a few weeks ago, and I chose the day that every single person in Dutchess County was getting tested at Pulsendi, it felt like, and so I sat in my car for a really long time. So we don't want to create that experience for folks. So I think, we've got really great staff. I think we can do this in a pretty efficient way. So if we're able to open it up to remote folks who are interested, I think we can do that. We received about 1,000 tests from the state, and 10% of our in-person is about 170, 180. So, the 1,000 tests will get us through several weeks. So we probably could, open it up a little bit. And some people may just want to know too. So just, I also got an email from someone about wanting things more than 2 days. And, trust me when I say this, I would absolutely love to do more than the hybrid. We are going to stick with hybrid right now. And, there's so much uncertainty. So we're going to stick with it right now, but we're always kind of evaluating if we can do more. I know there's a handful of districts in the region. All of them, I'm not saying we're a huge district because we're not, but all of them are really, really small. And some of them have pulled off doing 5 days a week. But we have assessed stuff, and we just could not pull off the social distancing that we have to do to get more kids in. Bringing in additional kids or expanding, we have some outlier classes with really low numbers, then we have some that aren't, and so we can't just sort of blanket let more people in. Testing, unfortunately, would not allow us to just immediately bring more people in, but it would give us a really good sense if our numbers were low about the level of safety here. But I think we'd have to do the testing for a while before it influenced a big change in what we do. All right. I said I was going to be done in 30 minutes. You guys had a lot of great questions. I am going to wrap it up. But I appreciate you being here. I at least got it ended before 8 o'clock, so you did not have to spend an entire hour with me. But there's going to be a lot more coming out about testing. We have a lot of work to do to get it all straight. So we will work hard to figure that out. And we'll do a lot of communicating next week. So I think there's one more slide. So just next steps, we're going to keep communication channels open. We'll keep doing these town halls. We'll keep doing emails and calls, and I'm most certain when June hits, you will never want to hear my voice at least for 2 months. So, but June is far ways away. But anyway, we'll keep all those communication channels open. Be prepared for everything. But a lot of the questions I think tonight were sort of like this, and I totally get it. When is someone going to shut us down? Right now, it looks like it's really becoming a very local decision, and so we're just going to keep trying to just really focus on this safety, health stuff, and really try to keep this thing going. And I'm not going to think about it tonight because I'm pretty brain dead, because I've been, unfortunately, Wednesdays, I feel like I'm in front of the screen the whole day, which I know is what everyone's dealing with right now. But we need to also start thinking about next year. I'm not going to think about it tonight, but we do need to start thinking about it because there's just a lot of uncertainty about next year too. So we need to start preparing for all contingencies then as well. So next week or even over the weekend, you might be getting kind of an FAQ with a Google form if you want to sign a consent form for testing. We're not going to be testing your kid all alone. You'll be able to be with your child at a testing center that we create. And it's just a voluntary thing, but it's just a way for us to add a layer of safety to this whole thing. All right. Well, we recorded this, and I think usually it takes us a couple days because we have to get rid of phone numbers that are on here. And so we'll try to put it up by Friday. And I'll email out. I'll try to do a little summary of what I said tonight too, for folks who do not want to sit there listening to me talk for 48 minutes. All righty. Okay. So everybody have a great night. Thanks for being here, and very appreciative of you spending time with us tonight. All right. Take care. Bye.